It's been brought to my attention that there aren't nearly enough resources on how to make comic books or comic book pages from absolute scratch. When I was in middle school and I used to draw some comic books of just heroes and things like that, I would just draw pages, write dialogue, make it up as I went along. By the time I got to like page 18 or 19, I'd start wrapping it up, either end the story, let the good guy win, or I would make it a cliffhanger. I now know that that is not really a good way to go about doing things. You've got to know how the story ends before you even start drawing the first page. Hence the script. Now, I'm not saying you just write pages upon pages. Now, initially I do write like about a one-page synopsis of the entire issue. What happens at the beginning, what happens at the ending, what roughly happens overall, just like a one-page overall view. Then I break that down into pages, written down, prepared for comic book artists. Now, since I'm drawing my own book and writing the script, I can kind of take some slack out when I'm writing. But if you're writing for another artist especially, you want to be very specific about what happens in each page and each panel. And you have to keep in mind that panels, you could probably fit 9 or 10 in a page, but that's not really a good way of doing it. I think the most success is grasped with 5 to 8 panels a page. And I actually leave room for an extra panel. Don't make too much go on per page, because storytelling may be inhibited by limited frames, but the artist may need another frame or two to better tell the story without change the angle, make something look better. So here I've got page 6, and I've got panels 1 through 7 labeled on it. And the first step is going to be, after you've written it and broken it down into panel form, you're going to want to make thumbnails. Thumbnails are rough sketches of the comic page, like what happens in panel 1 through 7 or through 6, and just see what happens up to that point. Now, regarding thumbnails are pretty much you sketch out what the script looks like roughly. This is a page of several thumbnails. Before I draw the issue, I actually will just draw out. Oh, this is actually pretty low quality. Each corner is a different page. Like I cut the page into 4 pieces, so you got a line through the middle and a line to just a big plus in the center. Over here I've got a thumbnail for page 5, page 6, page 7, and page 8. So by the time I've drawn out thumbnails for the entire issue, I've probably used 5 pieces of paper, front and back, if even that. And here is the page we're looking at, page 6. Cuts off right here. In fact, let me see if I can use something to make it a little clearer. Or a paintbrush. Pencil. Right here is the frame we're looking at. See if we can get the dialogue up at the same time. Now we've got the Word document and the thumbnail up together. Let's see how they match. Let's get this out the way. Panel 1, 2 soldiers washing dishes, and they have dialogue. All the dialogue means is you've got to leave some space at the top, like I guess an inch or 2 if possible, so that the letterer doesn't have to cut off some of the art for space. And yes, this is a thing that all pencilers have to be aware of. You've got to leave room for the letterers. Also, another tidbit, whoever talks first should be on the left-hand side so the tails of the letter balloons don't cross. That's another pet peeve. They can fix it by reversing the entire frame or by trying to be creative, but that's extra work for them. And if you're going to letter your own book, extra work for you, if you want it to look good. Panel 2, it's still the same 2 individuals talking, but you want to change the view a little bit. Not a full 180-degree spin, because that's a little bit of a taboo. It's not, and I'm not saying never do it, but not too much. I'll try to include an article about the 180-degree rule that I'd found useful in the past. Panel 3, one individual is going to be talking, maybe looking thoughtful, but you don't worry about the facial expression at this point. Panel 4, two different soldiers doing KP, and they get into a bit of more of an angry discussion. So I chose to zoom in on the person who becomes peeved first, so you can get a close-up of his face being angry. Now, I was fairly pleased with that thumbnail, but I ended up going with a different one. I ultimately ended up going with this thumbnail. Most of it's the same. The only main difference is I end the page with the guy getting angry by what the other guy says, rather than him getting angry and then responding in anger on the last panel here. So this way you've got to turn the page to see the response. Other than that, I think it's fundamentally the same, but next line of business is to make sure you've got the correct materials for this job. I don't believe I can accurately talk about what goes into making a comic book page without mentioning the materials that are required for it. Let me take it back, not required. The first issue that I'd drawn, I didn't have most of these materials, but they help a lot. You can use A4 paper. You can just draw it on printer paper, and you can scan it onto the computer, fit it into the correct comic book dimensions, and you'll be perfectly fine. But if you've got a little bit of extra cash, I'd recommend spending some money on these materials. Now, I use a mechanical pencil, a 0.7. I see the 0.9s are out there. I haven't tried one. But 0.5s they're not as dark and they're not as thick. So especially with thick paper, a 0.5 is not going to get you as far. Definitely going to need a ruler. I mean, there's no two ways about it. But if you can get an all-around geometry set, it's going to be even more helpful. The compass is going to be good for the circles and wheels and tires, any round thing that you may have. But sometimes, in fact, I think you'll end up doing more with a stencil. Now, at first I was reluctant to buy a stencil because they're like $7 or maybe even $15. They seem kind of expensive, and if I feel like I can make any circle I want using just a regular compass. That's not entirely true. Like if I had a wheel on a car off in the background, I needed this size circle, I wouldn't be able to get that on a compass. I couldn't make one quite that small, or definitely not quite this small. So if you really want to get rid of the compass altogether, you're going to have a lot of stencils. I've made do with this one so far. This stencil and a compass have got me as far as I needed to go regarding circles. Now on the paper. Strathmore Bristol board is very thick paper. It's really good for drawing onto. And I've used it in the past primarily for inking, actually, because with A4 paper the inks are going to soak through the page and cause it to start wrinkling up. And I have tried drawing a comic book page on here, and it wasn't bad. I mean, it erases very well. It's got a lot of detail able to be drawn onto it. I mean, it's got a lot more room. You've got like 3 or 4 times the room that you would have. Okay, you got twice the room. 11 by 17 versus 8.5 by 11. You've got literally twice the room to draw everything. So it'll take maybe a little bit longer to finish the page, but you can fit in so much more detail. But regarding the drawing of the page, the paper quality is perfect. There's nothing wrong with the paper quality, but I do like the overall effect on this version of the Bristol board better. Because those pre-aligned pages go a long way. Let me show what a page looks like without anything. It's already measured out to comic book frame dimensions. It's pre-aligned. It's hard to see. I'm sure. I don't know if these are going to come out on the video or not. But the dotted line is the live area. Anything that goes inside there is guaranteed to see the print, print. Anything outside of that area, there's really no guarantee. So keep all your important artwork and speech bubbles inside that what's called the live area. Now regarding drawing onto these kind of pages, I've successfully completed 2 pages on this Strathmore pre-aligned board. I still use the ruler, I still use the triangle, and they're great. But having these pre-lines on the outside make it that much easier. Give me something to line everything up with. Requires less draftsmanship, and ends up with more accuracy. Especially with pages that you've got a lot of lines going on anyway. I really regretted doing tiles on the walls on this page because I had to make the tiles line up here in that page. Still not sure if I got them perfect. I'm going to go back and check through them to make sure they line up. But yeah, that complicated thing. But bottom line, the Strathmore board with pre-lined paper is going to be excellent for drawing comic books. The one without the lines is going to be best for inking pages. Now, if you don't have access to both, or you have access to one, you can always make do. If you don't have access to the pre-aligned pages, you can draw pages on the regular Strathmore board. You just have to do the measurements first and figure out those kind of details. If you don't have the plain Strathmore board and you only have blue line, when you want to ink, have the copier print the page onto the back of the page, to where you don't have any blue lines you've got to remove on Photoshop before you ink them. Both are great materials. Now, not to say you can't do without them. I mean, I think that technically, if you just have access to a scanner, some A4 paper, a ruler, and a pencil, and a compass, perhaps, that's the bare minimum. I think you can make do with those. But if you want to get better results with less effort, then you want to get a few materials. Don't buy them all at one time, of course. They will add up. These Strathmore boards are both about $15. It's just they're not expensive, but they're going to add up, and you don't need everything at once. Just see what your skill level is, and the better you get, the more it's rationalized to spend money on things. You don't want to end up being that dilettante who thinks, hey, I want to draw comics, then you spend $50 or $80 on materials and you realize, you know what, this is kind of dumb. I'm not going to do this anymore. So make sure you want to do it, get good at it, and spend a little bit of money on it. Now let's look at the more established drafts. On here you can see the pre-aligning on the paper a little bit better than you could earlier on. The dotted line is the live area, as I said. Anything that goes outside of there is going to be cropped. I'm trying a new thing to where I want everything to be cropped, but I'm going to keep the main art in the center. This was the original picture I come up with. And I posted it on Pencil Jack to see what kind of critiques that I got for it. And I got some good stuff. A few of the faces I wasn't drawing quite right. They weren't at right angles as they were supposed to be, and I ended up doing a study on faces using Andy Loomis's books and trying to fix what I'd done. Like, he has a book on heads and hands that's really has a lot of detail on that. There are a few issues on anatomy. Fact is, they're still soldiers. It's supposed to be kind of muscular. So I thickened out their bodies on this frame and kind of rounded them out. Had this guy's head turned at a more natural angle. I did the line ruling to try to make the faces work, and added some more detail. Now, I didn't get this guy yet, but I will. Oh, there was also a matter with perspective and anatomy on those two, and that's a correction that I had made. Regarding the face on this one, it was still off center, so I've got a finalized version in which I fixed that. And I had this cart that the guy was pushing, like one of those restaurant food carts or dish carts. It was too big, and the fact is it's supposed to be a lot lighter. And I just could not find a reference drawing that was just right for it. I needed to find a reference drawing of somebody pushing a restaurant cart. Couldn't do it. Then I got to work early one day, and I saw there was someone pushing one of those carts. So I asked them, "Hey, do you mind if I take a picture of you with that cart?" And sure enough, they were flattered, they didn't mind, and that helped immensely. Because some things just don't have reference pictures on Google search or something. I mean, if I didn't find something there, I'd go down to a restaurant probably and then get that figured out. This is roughly the same page as what I just shown you. It's just a little darker. This is the final one that I'd come out with. Got the background darker and everything. I fixed most of the small issues. The face study cleaned things up. I got the faces looking the same from panel to panel. A couple of things I'll need to change before this hits print is the ears are kind of elfy, vampire-y. I didn't intend it to be that way, but someone had brought it to my attention on Pencil Jack that the characters have pointy ears. Problem number 1. Problem number 2, in this case where a character looks up, the ears are going to go down, and where they look down, the ears go up. And here I've got the ears regular placement. Now, I could have fixed that before I posted this, but then I have to make an extra trip to Office Depot. I'll just do that before I get to the inking stage, and I'll fix it before then. But as you can see, a lot goes into just the pencil stages. You've got to know what you're drawing and which panel. You've got to make a thumbnail for it. I'm talking about you make dozens of thumbnails until you find one that looks perfect, to where the camera's not all over the place, but it's not in one place, to where the story's getting told. Then once you get the thumbnail, you draw it out sketchy-like onto the real paper you want to work on. Then before adding a lot of detail, I think Pencil Jack's got a section for sketches and works in progress. Before you want to throw some hard pencils down, it might be a good idea to send it their way and see if someone with better eyes for detail can take a look at it and tell you about something before that. Well, that's all I've got for this. I hope you've learned something, and you have some idea on the early stages that go into drawing a comic book page. Thanks for watching.